I constantly have to remind myself that everything averages out to a bell curve. And that includes people's intelligence or their IQ as well. And it's unfortunate that, most are going to land in the middle, but then you have very few on both ends, right? And I guess without sounding too egotistical or like I'm boasting, unfortunately, I feel like I'm at the higher end of the scale, but that means everybody who's average or below average would be under me in that case, right? And it becomes hard to talk to people, right? Because when you yourself start seeing through the smoke and the mirrors of the system and the world that we live in, then you realize how many people are brainwashed or programmed by propaganda or just can't think for themselves, don't know how to problem solve, and it becomes ever more frustrating trying to communicate to people ideas that I have, or even just talking about theory, because people seem to get lost in semantics or they get lost in the weeds. They lose the plot of either the conversation or the problems at hand with society, and we lose track of how we as people need to work together to accomplish anything, right? Many hands make for light work. It's a great saying, and it applies to everything. The more people you have working on something or in collaboration, the easier it's going to be to achieve any goal, right? If we think of a house or an apartment building, you have the ground crew who comes in, surveys the land, flattens everything out, and maybe does foundation. You might have other people who do foundation, but you get the foundation in, then you have the framers. They put up the bones of the house, basically. Then you have the trades come in, like electrical, plumbing, carpenters for your cabinetry and stuff. And then you get the drywallers and people putting the finishing touches on, the painters and all that, right? And it becomes exponentially easier to achieve that goal of building a house when you have multiple people collaborating on it, right? And then there's somebody like me who's trying to do everything by themselves, gets no help, tries to support and encourage other people, doesn't get that energy back, and it makes me think of insanity, right? Like doing the same thing, expecting a different result. Every time I try to talk to people, help people, support, build community, whatever it is, it feels like it's falling on deaf ears or on people who aren't willing to do the same. And it's unfortunate that that reaches as far as the class war, right? Lots of people who either don't know what they're talking about, or who are too engulfed in propaganda, who aren't thinking for themselves, or who just genuinely don't want equal rights for everyone. It's truly crazy to me, but I feel like there's only two types of people in this world. The people who are willing to do the work, the working class, unfortunately in this case the slaves, and the criminals. Sure, there might be normal people, working class people or working level people that do horrendous things and become criminals, but then the bourgeoisie would also be criminals because they take advantage of the people under them and the system as a whole, right? But then because of propaganda, we look at other people on our level, on the working class level, and we accuse each other of being criminals, when there are people taking advantage of us and literally committing crimes daily that aren't getting punished for it. And it feels like the things that I'm saying or that I talk about are pretty obvious, are pretty basic things, right? But then there are still people who don't understand or would rather stay blissfully ignorant. And then it comes back to what I started this video with, how it seems like people are just less intelligent. And I think there are people within the whole range or spectrum of intelligence that are both working class and criminals, right? For me, it really comes down to, are you willing to put the work in for yourself, for the things that you need in life, and then help your community? Or are you just in it for yourself, for material things, for fame or vanity, and capital, I guess? Are you just in it for the money? That's where I truly don't understand the system we have and how so many people can support it or are willing to perpetuate it. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not trying to ride on my high horse or act better than other people. Like I said, I feel like these are pretty basic things that I'm trying to talk about or have conversations about. And I don't understand why people aren't even willing to entertain the conversations about it. You know what I mean? About changing the system, about doing things differently. And it truly would be as simple as not participating in the system that we have as it is, refusing to participate in it the way it is. And the easiest way to change the system is to change how we live and what we do on a daily basis. Are we truly waking up and doing what we want to with our lives, or are we just doing what we're told to? And I truly wonder what this world would look like if more people were doing what they wanted because they genuinely wanted to do it, not just because they needed something to do to make money, to make a living that's barely even a livable wage. You know what I mean? And let's go back to intelligence for a sec and problem solving. And I don't know, just being able to understand more complex ideas is that I feel like people, if they are lower on the scale of intelligence, are able to increase their intelligence by the things they choose to do with their lives and their time and what they choose to research and focus on. Like, it does not take a genius to become class conscious, right? It does not take a genius to understand that criminals should be punished for their actions in our modern society. No matter whether the crime is murder or rape, sexual assault, whatever, pedophilia, or it's criminals on a mass scale through companies and wage slavery and controlling of the masses. There's also the saying, it takes all kinds to make a village. In so many different countries around the world, almost everywhere around the world has become a mixing pot. Through social media, through travel, through industrialization in our modern world, connections have become more efficient than ever, and it seems like all communities have become more diversified, right? So it feels like that shouldn't divide us, because we have different cultures, different ways of living. That shouldn't divide us, but we should try and incorporate the best parts of each culture and civilization, right? To make it as simple as possible, if you have, say, 10 people, each an ambassador for a different culture or walk of life, whatever it is, put it to a democratic vote. Bring up points or aspects that you think are strong and could benefit society, and bring up points that you think are weak and could cause problems for society, and have everybody talk about it and go, okay, what do we think about Ambassador 1's proposal? Everybody comes together and says, yeah, that would be good for society, or maybe not, maybe we could go without it, right? But that is obviously super simplistic. Just like when people talk about left versus right politics, it usually comes down to capitalism or class war, or whatever issue you want to bring up. But to be part of the right is to be enslaved. Like, I don't know why people are so willing to be slaves and perpetuate the system that enslaves them. And to take it one step further, we can understand that there are injustices in society, but then we don't even want to actually acknowledge who is committing those crimes or injustices to the society. And then bringing this to art or the music industry. The music industry now is inherently based on capitalism, especially with the streaming platforms and the content of the music. But then you look at something like painting or pop culture media, whatever medium you want to express yourself in, it has all been diluted and fucked up by capitalism, and people just saying, oh, well, I like making art, so let me do it for money. No, make the art because you like making the art, and put some sort of social narrative in there. Like, it's almost like people forget why artists become remembered in the first place, it's because you have to be bold and brash and say things that other people aren't saying or do things that other people aren't doing. And if in this case it means bringing leftist ideology to music and art or social media, whatever it is, to the people, okay, I guess that's my job. But F's sakes, I'm just standing on the outside looking at how fucked up everything is, trying to talk to people and say like, hey, you don't see this too, you don't realize it? And people are just coming at me thinking I'm the bad guy. Like, I don't know, it's like a nomad coming to a fucking plantation, talking to the slaves and saying, hey, you fuck with your slave master? And they're like, oh yeah, well, the slave master gives us a home and food and all this. Sure, he punishes us if we don't do what he says, and he'd kill us if we ever tried to leave, whatever. But yeah, we back him, we respect him. Like, how does that make sense? It seems like Stockholm Syndrome, right? So much propaganda and abuse that then you start sympathizing with your abuser. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe this is the curse of the intelligent mind, being able to see the things that others can't and try to explain it to them, but then nobody understands what they're talking about. You know what I mean? And I think we need to remember that the things that people say are unachievable or unrealistic about communism or socialism are from a capitalist point of view. A capitalist will tell you that without capitalism, you would never have the iPhone or whatever car model you can think of or XYZ, right? In reality, what capitalism gives us is consumerism, materialism, planned obsolescence, and a system that perpetuates working not only to survive, but then to buy the next best thing because the last one shit the bed, you know? Whereas on the left, with communism or socialism, everybody should have a decent house, means of communication, means of travel if that's what they want to do, and most importantly, access to the means of production. So what does that mean? That means everybody should have the right to not only what a factory makes, but then they should also have the right to go and work there to help improve whatever it is. And then we shouldn't have to focus on continually pumping out more products to satisfy whatever boardroom of suits wants to continually make profit off of whatever company. You know what I mean? Or whatever means of production in this case. Like something as simple and as basic as food and water. Not only should we be able to produce enough food and water for everybody, but then we should also focus on means of storing the food so that we don't need to constantly focus on making new fresh products and then throwing them out or getting rid of them. But maybe then that fresh produce that isn't so fresh anymore can be somehow preserved or transformed into a different form that will make it last longer and can then be given to other people that don't have access to the freshest food all the time, right? And the reason we still have third and first world countries in the first place is because of capitalism and people taking advantage of everybody under them. And then you look how a society like China functions, even though they are still authoritarian communists, which is closer to fascism than true communism, but at least they're more left-leaning. Look at how they're trying to build relationships with all the oppressed countries. Have you ever heard the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Well, how many enemies have Europe and North America been making over the years, exploiting and taking advantage of all the other countries? And then China just has to go around and say, hey, we'll actually give you a fair deal if you just help us out and we both benefit mutually. Or they even help out other countries more than themselves because those other countries are underdeveloped. You know what I mean? But again, like I've said a million times at this point, slavery never left. It's just called business and economics now. We're enslaved to the wages and the taxes. And who pays those wages? The masters. Whether you want to think of them as plantation owners or an elite cabal like the Freemasons or whatever the hell, because as you move up in the Freemasons, you can become a Grand Master. Bro, like, this shit's so stupid to me. Like, I don't know. Nobody lives forever. I'm trying to put these ideas out into the universe and try and get us there as a society. But again, doing anything alone and solo is a lot harder than doing it with other people, right? But yeah, you can try and, help people become more intelligent, more aware, try to help them better their own lives. But at the end of the day, if people don't want to help themselves, you can't do anything to help them, But I'll leave this one here for now. If you enjoyed, some support would be greatly appreciated. All that good stuff. Like I say at the end of all my videos, I love you, stay safe, good luck, and take it easy.